Now what I've also done is I've taken a casserole dish and I've greased it with some butter. Totally covered it so nothing will stick. And I made some mashed potatoes. And I didn't make mashed potatoes here because I don't think you'd like to watch water boil and me mash a potato. There's nothing interesting about that. You have your own recipe for mashed potatoes. Mine was I diced up the potatoes into pieces about that big, boiled them in salted water so they were almost done, not mushy. I mashed them, added a little bit of milk and cream, and a couple of tablespoons of butter. Whipped it all up, and that's what we have. But I encourage you to use your own recipe. Here's the buttered dish. So what we're going to do now is to take those mashed potatoes while the meat and the shallot, the leeks are just finishing up. And what you want to do is put a little layer on the bottom of this. Kind of smash it around. It doesn't have to be perfect. Okay. There we go. Now, we take the meat and I'm going to use a spoon here. I think that'll be better. And we just kind of layer it. Oh, this smells so good. I really wish you could smell this. Franklin eats so many different things. You know, he was a big fan of cranberries and maple syrup and Indian corn. He actually wrote praises of Indian corn. And then we found that Franklin was the man who introduced America to tofu. Yeah, that's true. He wrote a letter to his friend John Bartram in, what was it? It was 1770, I believe. He sent him a letter and included some soybean seeds and told him in the letter that these were unique seeds. They made a remarkable thing, and that the Chinese made a cheese out of it. So his interpretation of tofu was some kind of a cheese made from these beans. Okay, so we've got that in there. Now we're going to finish it off with the rest of the mashed potatoes. Again, this does not have to be perfect. Don't get yourself crazy. Mashed potatoes don't always cooperate. They get a little sticky. Okay. It must have been real hard in the days of Franklin to get all this stuff done in a kitchen that had, you know, a fireplace, a cauldron pot. Okay, here we go. Now, the way he topped this off back then was to take some Swiss cheese, or things that were close to Swiss cheese, and grate them. You need about 3/4 of a cup. And then you mix it with creme fraiche, which is sort of a sour cream type thing. So don't get yourself crazy if you can't find creme fraiche. Here it is. So I have my cheese. That's my grated cheese. Here's the creme fraiche. We're going to blend these things together, mix them up, and then spread it over the top. You know, another thing Franklin did was he was the first postmaster general, but he started the post office. He went out and went from town to town, set up a little office, and had some people drive the mail back and forth. And in order to charge for the mail, they did it by distance back then. He had to go out and measure the distance between different post offices so he could put together a schedule for postage. And it was hard. How do you really do that with any accuracy? He invented an odometer that went on the back wheel of his wagon. So as he drove from post office to post office, he could keep track of the miles, and they used that to set up the postage fees for the day. Okay, so here we go. We have that creme fraiche or sour cream and grated cheese, which goes on the top here. You get your oven preheated to about, each oven's different, so 335, 345. And you're going to give it about a half hour. Check it at a half hour, and it may need a little bit more time. It should brown up. Now, there we go. Okay. Now, excuse me while I pop this in the oven, which is, excuse me, chef's choice. Just want to adjust this. There we go. And, you know, there's magic in these shows. You just saw me do that. It takes about 30 minutes for it to cook, but we've got one almost, oh, I think it is done. Let me pull that out and share it with you. Oh, it's bubbling up. Oh, this is nice. Oh, you can smell it. Don't you want to try this? Really? Thank Ben Franklin. Here we go. Oh, I better use that glove. I'm going to burn my hand again. I want you to see this, if you can. It's crisped up. It's a little golden brown. If you like it dark, you can let it go in for another 5-8 minutes or so. But that's perfectly done. You should probably let it sit for 5 minutes or so. We'll dig into that beforehand anyhow. And then just savor. Close your eyes. Think of the days back in France when everybody thought potatoes were poisonous. And Franklin, through his clever scheme, changed the whole course of culinary history on the European continent by getting France involved with the potato. Not a bad record. Now, let's come back to that First Amendment thing that we were talking about. The separation of church and state. Where did that come from? Well, in October, I think it was, 1801, Jefferson was president, and he got a letter from the Danbury Baptist group, who were very, very nervous. I mean, this Constitution thing had passed, and they had the Bill of Rights, and they were concerned that the Bill of Rights said the government shall not make any laws respecting religion, and it was their interpretation that the government was giving the people the rights. When in fact, the right to exercise your religion is, in their eyes, an inalienable right that can only come from God, not from the government. So they were a little nervous about the government having the power to do this, when in fact they believed it was there all along. So that was in October. In January of 1802, Jefferson wrote them a letter. And in the letter he said, no, this is not about giving the government the power to do this. It is stating a fact. It is just acknowledging the fact that it exists, and the government is forbidden to get involved. In that letter, he used the word building a wall to separate church and state. That was the only time it has ever been used, and it was used as a metaphor. He also explained that he was using it as a metaphor in the letter. It appeased the Danbury Baptist, and history moved forward. Now, over the course of the years, from 1802 through 1847, many cases have come up before the Supreme Court regarding the involvement of the government and church, and all of them referred to the Jefferson's letter and the separation of church and state. But they did it in the context of the entire letter, where they acknowledged that Jefferson's point of view was to keep the government out of people's affair and let them alone to do what they will. In 1947, it's the Iverson case. The Warren Court interpreted it differently. It was a liberal court. They looked at it and only took those words, separation of church and state. They didn't do it in the context of the letter. They didn't explain it. And they ignored all of the other previous interpretations and said that that meant You can't have religion anywhere that's associated with government, schools, and the like. They actually redefined what our founding fathers had intended. That's outrageous. We need to be able to make sure that this doesn't happen again, and maybe we can go back and overturn that. But in order to do that, we must make sure that the president who is elected will appoint judges who will support the Constitution. Now, okay, I think we're ready to give this a try. Let's see what this looks like here. Still a little hot. Ooh, see that steam come up. Well, I'm going to try a little bit. I should have put it on a plate, but I didn't put one here, so this is probably not kosher. But oh, that's good. That's good. I'm sure this, over many, many occasions, contributed to the mass of Benjamin Franklin. If you will, a great man with food, and a great mind when it came to science and government. I want to caution you to take something else that Ben Franklin said and take it very seriously, especially as we move into a new year that is a presidential election year. People who get up there and run for office are compelled to make promises. Don't listen to promises. Look at actions. What have they done? If they don't have a record, be very, very skeptical of whether they're going to deliver on their promises. As we see today, hope and change. Well, the one thing he did say 5 days before the elections, Obama said, we are 5 days away from fundamentally changing the United States of America. And boy, was he right. We are in debt up to our eyeballs and then some. Unemployment, 9.2%. Real unemployment, probably closer to 17%. Be very cautious. Listen to what Franklin said. He said the Constitution, sorry, wrong one. What he said was, beware the misdirection of rhetoric. We're in the season of rhetoric right now. Everything must be challenged. And how do you challenge it? You challenge it by putting it through the filter of common sense. Just ask yourself that simple question. Is what these guys are proposing to do make any common sense to me at all? If I had that problem in my family, would I do it? I think not. Common sense is a powerful, powerful tool. So, I encourage you to make the shepherd's pie, eat like Benjamin Franklin, but more importantly, think like Benjamin Franklin. I invite you to our YouTube channel, CommonSenseWear, and our website, which is CommonSenseWear.com. Because once you get there, you will see a bunch of patriotic designs that can be put on any number of objects so that you can actually wear your common sense thought proudly and loudly. So your neighbors, the next town, and eventually Washington will see what you are saying. Critically, critically important. There is one design that I want you to check out. It's called Remember the Constitution. It's just a little simple design that says, and it's talking about the power of the word remember. The power of the word remember can change history. It has and it will. It will change it in 2012. The little design has four lines. It says 1823, remember the Alamo. 1941, remember Pearl Harbor. 2001, remember 9/11. And then, very importantly, 2012, remember the Constitution as you go to the polls. Well, this is Mike Breen, thanking you for joining me today in this little experiment, the Founding Fathers and Foods. I encourage you to visit those websites that I've talked about, and I want you to embrace common sense every time something comes out of Washington. And remember that history is a side dish that goes well with any meal. Good night.